The sun was dipping behind the rolling hills of Aremu village, painting the sky with streaks of gold and crimson. Birds returned home in rhythmic flight, and the warm evening breeze carried the smell of roasted yams and palm oil through the narrow paths. Children played barefoot near the stream, their laughter echoing through the quiet air. Among them were two inseparable young women, Lami and Adah. They grew up side by side, sharing secrets, dreams, and even food when times were tough. Everyone in the village knew them as sisters of the heart. Lami was lively and outspoken, while Adah was calm, graceful, and humble. One afternoon, as they fetched water from the stream, Lami glanced at Adah and laughed. "Adah," she said, balancing her clay pot on her hip, "you walk like a queen. You think a prince will fall from the sky and marry you?" Adah giggled. "Ah, Lami, who would marry a poor girl like me? We both know we'll probably end up selling yams in the market." Lami smiled and splashed water at her friend. "Never say never. The gods are funny. Maybe one day your good heart will bring you good fortune." Little did they know, those words would soon come true, but in a way that would test the bond of their friendship forever. Months passed, and life continued quietly until one hot afternoon when the sound of royal drums echoed across the village. The king's guards arrived, announcing that King Obi, the young ruler of Aremu, would be choosing a wife soon. Every young woman in the land began to dream. Lami and Adah were no exception. They spent evenings talking about what it would be like to live in the palace. One morning, as Adah walked to the stream, she found a small, injured bird near the path. She picked it up, whispering, "Oh, poor thing, let me help you." She gently wrapped it in her scarf and carried it home, feeding it crumbs and water. Unknown to her, the bird was a spirit messenger from the palace, one sent by the Queen Mother to test the hearts of the village women. When the bird healed, it transformed into a glowing ball of light that whispered, "Your kindness has reached the palace. The king will hear of you." Then it vanished. Adah was left trembling, her heart pounding. She told Lami everything that happened. Lami laughed, thinking her friend was joking. "So a glowing bird told you that the king will know your name? Adah, you've been in the sun too long." But only days later, royal messengers arrived again, this time calling for Adah by name. The village erupted in whispers. "Adah, the quiet one? How?" Lami stood frozen as she watched her best friend, dressed in her simplest wrapper, follow the guards to the palace. Inside the grand palace, Adah met King Obi for the first time. He was tall, kind-eyed, and carried a warmth that immediately calmed her. He had heard of her good heart, and after a few meetings, he made a shocking announcement. Adah would be his queen. The news spread like wildfire. People danced, women sang her name, and even elders said her destiny was blessed by the ancestors. But while the village celebrated, Lami's heart began to rot with envy. That night, as she sat alone, she whispered bitterly, "How can she, Adah of all people, become queen? We grew up together. If not for me, she wouldn't even know half the things she knows." She tried to push the thoughts away, but jealousy is a slow poison. It eats, it burns, and it never stops whispering. Days turned into weeks. Lami visited the palace several times, pretending to be happy for her friend, but each time she saw Adah dressed in silk and gold, her bitterness deepened. One afternoon, she stood outside the palace gate watching as Adah waved from the balcony. The guards greeted her as Queen Adah. Lami clenched her fists so tight that her nails dug into her palms. That night, she made a decision that would change everything. At midnight, when the moon hung low and the crickets sang their lonely songs, Lami wrapped herself in a dark shawl and crept into the forest. The deeper she went, the colder it became. The air thickened with whispers, the kind that made the heart race. At last, she reached a small hut lit by a faint red glow. A voice came from within, rough and eerie. "I know why you're here, Lami of Aremu." Lami froze. You know my name?" A figure stepped into the light, an old woman with silver hair and skin marked with ancient symbols. Her eyes glowed faintly. "I know all names," the sorceress said. "You seek what does not belong to you." Lami hesitated but gathered her courage. "I want what Adah has. I want the king's heart. I want to be queen." The old woman smiled darkly. "Then you must give me something in return." Lami's voice trembled. "What? What do you want?" "Your womb," the sorceress said. "The fruit of your womanhood. You shall never bear a child, but you will have the throne." Lami's breath caught. "You mean I won't be able to—" "Decide quickly," the sorceress interrupted. Envy does not wait. Lami closed her eyes. Her heart pounded like thunder. Finally she whispered, "I accept." The sorceress began chanting. Smoke filled the hut, and Lami screamed as her skin burned with invisible fire. When it ended, the sorceress handed her 2 vials, one red, one blue. "The red potion will turn Adah into something unworthy of the king's love. The blue one will make him see you as his heart's desire." Lami took them with shaking hands. "Remember," the old woman added with a grin, "the gods always collect their debt." A week later, Lami visited the palace, pretending to bring gifts for the queen. Adah welcomed her warmly, smiling as always. "Lami, you haven't visited in so long. I missed you." Lami forced a smile. "I missed you too, my queen." They sat together, drinking from golden cups. But while Adah looked away, Lami poured a few drops from the red vial into her drink. Moments later, Adah's head began to spin. She gasped, clutching her throat. "Lami, and what's happening to me?" Lami pretended to panic, holding her hand. "Maybe you need to rest." But before she could finish, Adah's body began to shimmer and fade. Her eyes filled with tears as her voice grew faint. Why would you do this?" And with one final breath, Adah transformed into a golden fish, flopping helplessly on the palace floor before disappearing into thin air. Lami screamed for help, pretending to faint. When the guards rushed in, she wept, claiming that the queen had suddenly vanished in a magical accident. King Obi was devastated. He mourned for days. Then Lami used the second potion. The king slowly began to see her differently. Her eyes seemed gentler, her face more beautiful. Within months, he made her the new queen. But as the sorceress warned, her womb was sealed by the spell. Years passed, and no child came. The years rolled by like dry leaves in the wind. Lami sat on her golden throne beside King Obi, wrapped in royal silk, wearing the crown she had once envied. The people praised her beauty, yet she felt a hollow ache in her chest. The king had grown distant, and whispers filled the palace. "She cannot give the king an heir," the maids whispered behind her back. "Maybe the gods are punishing her." Lami heard the rumors every day, but she never dared to look at herself in the mirror for long. Each time she did, she saw the reflection of her friend's face, Adah's soft eyes staring back in silent accusation. At night, she often woke up sweating, hearing water dripping somewhere near her bed, and sometimes she could swear she heard a fish whisper her name. "Lami, Lami." The voice was faint, echoing from the palace fountain. One night, she stormed outside, clutching a lantern, her breath shaky. "Who's there?" she shouted into the darkness. "Show yourself!" But only the fountain rippled under the moonlight. Still, deep beneath those ripples, a golden fish glowed faintly, its eyes sorrowful, watching the woman who had once been its sister. Far away in the outskirts of the kingdom lived a poor widow named Naika and her young daughter Cassi. They survived by selling firewood and fetching water for people in the market. Every morning, Cassie would wake up before sunrise, her little legs carrying her through the forest paths. Naika, though tired and frail, would smile and say, "The world is hard, my daughter, but we must face it with clean hearts." One afternoon, as Cassie fetched water from the stream, she noticed something shimmering beneath the surface. She leaned closer and gasped. It was a beautiful golden fish. Unlike any she'd seen before, its scales sparkled like the sun. But what startled her most were its eyes. They looked human, sad, almost pleading. Cassie whispered softly, "Poor fish, you look lonely." When she dipped her hand into the water, the fish didn't swim away. Instead, it floated toward her and tapped her fingers gently. She laughed. "Mama must see you." Naika was shocked when Cassie returned carrying a clay pot filled with water and the shining fish inside. "My child, where did you find such a thing?" "By the stream, Mama. It let me hold it." Naika stared at the fish, uneasy. "That's no ordinary creature. We'll keep it safe until we know what it means." That night, as Cassie slept, Naika sat by the small clay bowl that held the golden fish. Its eyes glowed faintly in the dark. Then, in a trembling voice, the fish spoke. "Please, don't be afraid." Naika dropped her cup, gasping. Who's speaking?" "It's me," said the fish. "I was once Queen Adah of this land." Naika's eyes widened. "The lost queen? But they said she vanished years ago." "It was my friend, my sister Lami. She envied my blessings and cursed me. I've lived in the river ever since. Only one with a pure heart could find me, and your daughter did." Naika trembled. "What must we do?" The fish's glow flickered. "The curse can be broken, but only through truth and bravery. Take me to the palace, to the king. Tell him the truth, but be warned. Lami will try to stop you." Naika hesitated, looking at her sleeping child. "How can a poor woman like me stand before the king?" The fish's voice softened. "Courage is the crown of the poor." The next morning, Naika placed the fish in a larger pot of water and carried it carefully on her head. Cassie followed closely, clutching her mother's wrapper. As they reached the palace gates, the guards laughed. "Old woman, what business do you have here? You bring fish for the royal kitchens?" Naika bowed. "No, my lord. This is no fish. This is your true queen." The guards exchanged glances and burst into laughter. "Take her away before the king hears this madness." But before they could touch her, the pot began to glow. The water inside shimmered like sunlight. The guards froze. "By the gods! Let us in," Naika said firmly. Moments later, the king himself appeared, curious about the commotion. When he saw the fish, his eyes widened. Something in his heart stirred, a feeling of sorrow and longing he hadn't felt in years. Naika knelt before him. "Your Majesty, forgive my boldness. This fish is no ordinary creature. It carries the soul of your first queen, the one who vanished." The court gasped. King Obi stepped forward slowly, his heart pounding. "What are you saying, woman?" Before Naika could speak again, Lami entered the courtyard, her gown trailing behind her. Her eyes darted from the king to the glowing fish, and her face turned pale. "Your Majesty," she said quickly, forcing a smile, "this woman is mad. Do not listen to her." But the king's gaze was fixed on the fish, whose eyes shone with tears. He whispered, "Adah." The fish flicked its tail and the palace air trembled. Lami's heart raced. She could feel the spell unraveling. The king ordered that no one move. "Bring the royal priest," he commanded. "We will know the truth." Within moments, the old priest arrived, his white robe glistening with sacred dust. He gazed into the pot and nodded slowly. This is indeed no ordinary creature. I can feel the soul trapped within. He placed his hands over the water, murmuring ancient incantations. The air thickened with golden mist. Suddenly, a piercing scream erupted, not from the fish, but from Lami. She clutched her chest, staggering backward. "No, stop! You don't understand!" The king turned sharply. "Lami, what is happening?" Tears streamed down her face. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I only wanted what she had." The king stared at her, horror and betrayal mixing in his eyes. You did this?" Lami dropped to her knees. "I loved you. You were supposed to be mine." The priest's chant grew louder, and the fish began to rise from the pot, glowing brighter and brighter until the whole palace was bathed in golden light. Then, a loud crack, like thunder. The light exploded, and when it faded, standing before them was Queen Adah, alive, radiant, and in tears. The court fell silent. The king ran to her, embracing her tightly. "Adah, my heart, my queen." Adah looked weak, but smiled faintly. "My love, I never stopped watching over you." The golden light dimmed, and all eyes turned to Lami. She lay trembling on the ground, her skin pale, her beauty fading rapidly as the magic turned against her. The priest looked at her sadly. "The curse you cast has returned to you. You cannot take what was never yours," Lami screamed, her voice echoing through the palace. "Please forgive me." "Adah, I'm sorry." "I was blinded by jealousy." Adah stepped forward, her eyes filled with sorrow. "You were my sister, Lami. I would have shared everything with you, except my husband. Why couldn't you be happy for me?" Lami wept bitterly. "I don't know. I was empty inside," the king spoke sternly. "You brought ruin to this house and pain to the one who loved you most. The gods will judge you." The priest raised his staff, and Lami's body began to glow with the same golden light. But this time it burned instead of being blessed. Her screams echoed until her body turned into shimmering dust that scattered in the wind. The palace fell silent. Only the wind whispered through the hallways, carrying her final words. "Forgive me." Days later, peace returned to Aremu. Queen Adah regained her throne beside King Obi, and joy returned to the land. As for Naika and Cassi, they were summoned to the palace and honored publicly. King Obi spoke to the crowd. "It was through the courage of a poor widow and her daughter that our true queen was restored. From this day forward, Naika shall never know hunger again." He granted them a fine house near the palace and gold enough to last generations. Cassi knelt before the queen, smiling shyly. "I'm glad you're free, my queen." Adah touched her hair gently. "And I'm glad there are still hearts as pure as yours in this world." The villagers cheered, but deep inside, Adah sometimes looked toward the forest, remembering Lami, the friend who became her curse. One evening, she whispered to the wind, "May your soul find peace wherever you are." A single golden feather drifted down from the sky. Landing softly on her palm, she smiled faintly. Perhaps she already has. The morning sun stretched over the land of Aremu, lighting the palace rooftops in gold. The kingdom had changed, not just in peace, but in spirit. The story of the jealous friend and the cursed queen spread far beyond the village borders. People whispered it in markets, sang it around fires, and mothers told their daughters, "Beware envy, for it hides behind smiles." Inside the palace courtyard, Queen Adah stood by the same fountain where she had once heard the whispers of her curse. The water shimmered softly, and she could still see faint traces of golden dust floating upon it. She reached out and let her fingers touch the water, whispering, "This same fountain saw my fall and my rise. It reminds me that even pain has purpose." King Obi approached quietly, his voice deep but gentle. "You still come here every morning?" Adah smiled faintly. "I do. It helps me remember." "Not the curse!" But the lesson, he took her hand. The kingdom is whole again because of you. She looked up at him, her eyes soft. Because of faith and forgiveness, the king nodded. And because of truth, to celebrate Adah's return, the king declared a grand festival, the Festival of Restoration, so that no one in Aremu would ever forget what jealousy could destroy and what love could heal. The palace gates opened, and people from every corner of the land came bearing gifts. Drums beat, dancers spun in circles, and the smell of roasted maize filled the air. Children ran between the stalls, laughing and singing songs about the Golden Queen. Naika and her daughter Cassi arrived too, dressed in beautiful new clothes given by the queen herself. When they entered, everyone made way. Naika bowed deeply before the king and queen. My king, my queen, may peace never leave your home again. Adah smiled warmly and lifted Naika's chin. You've given us more than peace, Naika. You gave us truth. She turned to Cassi, who blushed as Adah placed a small golden necklace around her neck. Wear this always, child. Let it remind you that courage shines brighter than gold. Cassi grinned widely. Thank you, my queen. I will never forget. The crowd clapped and cheered. That night, after the festival ended, the moon rose full and heavy, bathing the palace in silver light. Adah sat by her window, gazing out at the quiet courtyard. In the distance, she heard the faint croak of frogs and the rustling of leaves. Yet, amidst the stillness, she felt something. A soft, familiar warmth that brushed against her heart. She whispered to the night, Lami, if your spirit still lingers, may you find the peace you couldn't find here. A cool breeze drifted through the window, carrying a faint scent of jasmine, Lami's favorite flower. For a brief second, Adah smiled through tears. Goodbye, my sister. Days turned into months. Life in the kingdom flourished. The rivers sparkled, the harvests were good, and laughter returned to the palace halls. But among the people, stories began to twist, as they always do with time. Some said the golden fish was an angel. Others claimed it was a curse from a jealous spirit. But only those who lived it, the king, Adah, Naika, and Cassi, knew the truth. One morning, Adah visited the royal garden where the two friends used to sit as young girls, weaving flower crowns and sharing dreams. The garden had overgrown now, but she could still see their initials carved faintly into the old mango tree. A+L, Sisters Forever. Adah knelt before it and traced the letters gently. We were sisters once, and in a way, we still are. Your mistake became my lesson. She took a deep breath, standing tall. I'll teach others not to repeat it. That same week, Queen Adah gathered the women of the land, from rich merchants' daughters to the poorest villagers, and spoke to them beneath the palace courtyard tree. My sisters, she began, her voice calm but strong. I once believed friendship was unbreakable. I believed love could not be poisoned. But I learned that jealousy grows quietly, like weeds in a beautiful garden. The women listened intently. If you ever find joy, share it carefully. If your heart ever feels envy, fight it quickly. Because jealousy, once fed, will eat everything good around you. She paused and smiled softly. But also remember, forgiveness is stronger than any curse. The crowd nodded, some women crying softly. Adah continued, Today, I forgive my friend Lami. I set her memory free so that peace can live here again. Then she turned to the people and said with a smile, Let us build a kingdom where no one's light dims another's. The courtyard erupted in cheers. That night, as Adah slept, she dreamed she was walking through a field of golden grass. The wind whispered, and a gentle figure appeared, Lami, dressed in white, glowing softly. Adah, she said, her voice calm, Thank you. Adah stepped closer. Is it really you? Yes, Lami replied, smiling faintly. Your forgiveness freed me. I was trapped in my guilt for too long. Now I can rest. Adah's eyes filled with tears. I forgive you, Lami. I always did. Lami reached out her hand, and when Adah took it, warmth spread through her body. Goodbye, my sister, Lami whispered. Keep shining. Tell them what envy costs. And with that, she faded into light, leaving only the sound of gentle laughter echoing through the air. Adah woke up crying softly, but smiling through her tears. Goodbye, Lami, she whispered again, years later. When Adah grew older, she would often sit with children in the palace courtyard, telling them the story. Once upon a time, she would begin. Two girls loved each other like sisters, but one let envy enter her heart, and it destroyed everything she touched. The children would listen wide-eyed, but love and forgiveness brought peace again, she'd finish. And that's why you must never share your good news with everyone, because not every smile hides good intentions. Then she would laugh softly. But still, be kind, because the pure heart always wins in the end. The children would clap, and she'd say, Now go tell your mothers, and don't forget to subscribe to goodness and truth in your hearts. When Queen Adah finally passed on years later, the kingdom mourned deeply. The sky wept for 3 days, and the river near the palace shimmered gold again, just like it had on the day she returned. Cassi, now a grown woman and royal advisor, stood beside her coffin, whispering, You taught me what true strength looks like. Naika, old and frail, wiped her eyes. She was a queen not only of the throne, but of hearts. The people built a statue of her by the river, a woman holding a golden fish, as a reminder of her story. And every year, during the Festival of Restoration, they placed golden flowers in the water, letting them drift away like floating blessings. In every heart, there are 2 voices, one of love and one of envy. Whichever you feed will shape your destiny. Lami fed her envy, and it destroyed her. Adah fed her love and forgiveness, and it saved her. So, dear listener, when good news comes your way, guard it gently. Celebrate with those who celebrate truly. But remember, not every friend can handle your light. And if jealousy ever whispers in your ear, silence it before it silences your peace. Because, as the wise say, the sun loses nothing by letting the moon shine. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more heart-touching folk tales filled with love, lessons, and emotion. Tell us in the comments below, would you forgive a friend who betrayed you out of jealousy, or would you let them face their fate? Your voice matters, and your story might just inspire the next one we tell. Until next time, stay kind, stay wise, and remember, the heart that forgives always wins.